video is to showcase the Sapien 360 accounting system. This video is mostly to showcase the basics of invoicing, estimating, adding customers. We will be doing more videos on deeper information on how to use the accounting system. But all right, cool. So again, if you already have an account, just click sign in. If you want to start a 30-day trial, go ahead and do that. Very simple. Okay, cool. So I'm already logged in to, this is a demo account. It's actually I created a custom, an organization called Neftis Corp. I'm using it as a demo account. As you can see, it already shows that we have a bank account, accounts receivable, and it shows some transactions already. Think about this as a accounting and bookkeeping system that has integrated invoicing, estimated, purchase orders, employee management, very basic stuff. We will be building out a module for HR, full HR management, but this platform mainly handles the payroll transactions, right? The debits and credits to your accounting. Vendors, so same thing as the employees. You can pay vendors, print checks, things like that. It has your chart of accounts and your banking information that you can, and we will be integrating with like Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, the big banks, to be able to pull the transactions and have them reconciled into your chart of accounts. This video I'm going to be showing how to do invoicing, estimating, invoicing, that type of stuff, and then how to receive payments and how to deposit those payments into your bank account. So let me start with the chart of accounts really quick. This is where you're going to have your actual, like the core area of all your accounts, from bank accounts, petty cash, accounts receivables, undeposited funds. If you want to keep track of inventory, assets, again, accounts payable. So if you have vendors that they send you invoices or bills, and then you enter those bills into the system and then do a tally of all the vendors that need to be paid, and then you can write checks from the system and mail them out. Keep track of your credit cards, interest transaction, that way you have an idea how much interest you're paying. Liability accounts, equity accounts, income accounts. So when you create invoices, obviously the sales consult, depending on what kind of business you are, you can have different income accounts, and you could also modify them or add different income accounts if you offer different types of services. Cost of goods sold. So again, if you want to manage inventory and subcontractors to be able to, at the end of the year, do 1099s, and then expense accounts, right? So these are very basic expense accounts, but you could add your own, right? So this is kind of the backbone of the system where everything gets transacted, right? So you'll have your debits and credits to your bank accounts, for example, right? So there was a debit, and then an accounts receivable deposit. And it's just a way to be able to keep track of your accounting and be able to do reports at any given moment if you want to see your profit and loss, balance sheets, things like that. And then the biggest thing we have is the customer list. So this is where you would manage your customers' information. Again, we do plan to build out module applications that will be able to pull data from your customers. For example, we're building out a Google integration for Google reviews using AI. So the Sapien 360 will keep track of all the interaction you have with your customers. And if you ever feel a customer is a good fit to leave your review, the biggest issue that people have when trying to get Google reviews from your customers is just the amount of time that it takes for the customer to think of what to type, what to write about you, and then going to your Google page, posting it, all of that stuff. Our Google review module will have where it'll take all the interaction it's ever done with you, the emails, messages, things like that. It'll analyze it, and it'll create an AI written Google review that they can just copy and paste it into your Google profile. Obviously, they can copy it, paste it, and then modify it as needed. But it will be a very, very efficient way to get Google reviews. And that's a module we're going to be integrating. And so obviously your customer list will be very important because it's going to have everything about them, right? Their name, their address, phone number, email, things like that. And this demo that I'm doing right now, I'm going to be showcasing how to do an invoice, or if you do invoicing or you can do estimating as well. And then when you create it, well, let's do that. Let's create an estimate. So we're going to create an estimate. An estimate is essentially a way of telling a customer, hey, I'm proposing these services. Here are our fees. And if the customer likes it, they can say, hey, you know what, let's go do it. So let's do that first. So today's date, expiration date. So if you want to put an expiration date on the estimate, 30 days, whatever, that type of stuff, it will keep a chronological order of the estimate numbers. As you can see, I'm in estimate number 1004. Again, this is a demo, but it does keep track of the estimate numbers. Actually, let's go back to the customer list. Since this customer already exists, let me add a new customer. We'll create a customer from that new, or we'll create an estimate, invoice, payment received from that customer. As you can see, I created an estimate for this customer already before. I converted this estimate into an invoice, and then I received a payment on that invoice. But let's do that from scratch so that in case you want to learn how to add a customer. So we're here on the customer list. Very easy. When you're in the customer list, you just new customer. It's going to ask you for the name. So for example, we'll do OC Land Care Inc. And again, this is just a demo customer. It's not, we're not going to be sending the real email to them. But anyway, so you put in their email. Now, this is very important. You put in their email because if you want to be sending estimates, invoices, payment receipts to the customer, it's going to send it to this email that you put in here. So this customer's email is mark@oclandcare.com. And then obviously the contact information. So Mark, what's his last name? Mark Gomez. All right, Mark Gomez, that's right. I don't know his number, but for now we'll just put, the Neftis number. Let's go to bill to. So let me look up the customer really quick. OC Land Care Inc. I think I have them. I'm looking them up on another window. I apologize. I know that I'm not doing it. So I'm just looking up their address. I can put the address. And the reason I'm looking up the address so you guys can see how it looks on the invoice when we create the invoice, or the estimate and the invoice. So it's 1500 Warren Street, Santa Ana, California, 92840. All right, cool. And then ship to, obviously, if they have a job addresses, that type of stuff, which we'll do that. I'll show you how to do that. Notes, terms, let's say you offer terms, so net 30, net 20, net 60, whatever it is. So this will be the default that appears on the invoicing when you do create an invoice. So whatever you put in here for this customer is the default that will appear. You can always override it as well. But that's it. That's a simple how to add a customer. Now, we're adding the customer. Cool. So now we have two customers, right? We have Zavala Engineering and we have OC Land Care. Now, for example, this one has a little arrow because they have a job under that customer. So for example, let's say you're a contractor and you do, you're a painting contractor and you do maintenance contracting for like a property management. You can add the property management as the primary customer, and then under the customer, you would add what's called a job. The job would be the physical location, right? So for example, the property manager's address is, 123 any street, Newport Beach, California. And then the job can be, 456 other street, Santa Ana, California. But then that way, when you send the bill to, you're billing it to the customer for the job address XYZ, right? So let's do that. So we're going to do 8175 East Kaiser. That's the job name. So this is the name of the job. Is it ongoing? So for example, if you're a contractor doing painting contracting for this property and it's just ongoing, right? You're going to be working at this property as needed. So it's going to be just whenever they call you to the job, and you could put the start date. So let's say today was the day that I started working here. Job type, you can put again, whatever you're going to be doing for that property. So painting, you could even put a description. You can put notes. You could even put, for example, let's say there's a access control and you need to put like a gate code to be able to get into the property, and you want to be able to know where the gate code is. So you can put it under description. That way, whenever you look up the property or this job address, you have notes on that job address, right? And then the address to the job. So East Kaiser Boulevard, Anaheim, California 92808. And I'm just using an address from our old office. But that's as simple as it is. So now I added the job. So now I have the customer and the job for under that customer. And you can have multiple jobs, right? Let's add another one. Let's add let's say for this specific customer, you offer painting services for multiple locations. So let's do 1525 East Ontario, and the job name could be whatever you want, right? It could be Rockefeller Property or Rockefeller Office, whatever the property is called. Let's see here. Let's do that again. 18. The address is 1525 East Ontario Avenue, Corona, California 92881. Cool. So now this customer is the primary customer with 2 jobs, and then each job can have invoicing, right? So for example, we're going to do an estimate, convert that to an invoice for 8175, and then we'll just do a straight invoice for 1525. So from that job list, you're just going to go create estimate. It's pretty straightforward. It looks like it's a template essentially. You can put the date. You can put, again, like I said, an expiry date, and then your items, right? What is it that you're doing for this customer? And these are items that you can custom add to your item list. But let's do senior consulting, and then you can consulting on startup for whatever it is. But you can manually type in the description. You can have pre-filled description and just leave it as that, or you can manually type it in. And here's the cool part about estimating. It actually shows you what your cost is, how much you're marketing it up, and what you're selling it for. That way you have an idea of what your profit margins are. So let's say my cost is set $25, and it's gonna do 3 hours of consulting at $25 my costs, and I'm charging $75. But you can change this. You can charge $80. So my markup is 220%. I'm charging a total of $240. So that's pretty much it, how to create the estimate. You can click save to stay within the estimate. And the reason you want to do that is because you want to preview it before you send it to the customer. And what you do is you click on this PDF button. It opens up an estimate template of what it's going to look like what it looks like when you send them the estimate. Now, as you can see, my logo's on here, my address, my phone number, email, all of that stuff. The bill to, ship to, right? So see how the bill to has their billing address, the ship to has the project address, right? And then our fees. The cool part is the PDF does not show our cost; it just shows straight what you're billing, right? And this is an estimate. Now let me really quick go back to settings over here. This is where you're going to add your branding under branding and PDF. So whatever you put in here is what's going to appear on the PDF when you email it to them. So for example, you can upload your logo. You can put in your legal business name, your phone number, address, all of that stuff, right? And then for invoicing, you can, if you do receive the payment on a different address, like if they're going to mail you a check, but your address for receiving payments is a PO box, for example, this is where you were added. If it's the same address, that's fine. Just go ahead and add it again. But this is where you would add that payment info. Cool. Let's go back to estimates. So you can click on estimates up here. It'll show you all the estimates you've created. Right now it shows as draft. So this is the estimate I just created for this customer. So let's go ahead and let me go ahead and send this to myself as an email, so you guys can see how the customer receives it. So if you click on here, email to customer, you can actually override this email right here, which I'm going to. But whatever email is in here, that's who's going to send it to. So I'm just going to send it to myself, so you guys can see how the customer will receive it. So send email. So now it just sent me that email. And I will open it up over here on my end to show you how it looks. Okay, there it is. Let me bring it over here. Cool. So this is how I received it, or the customer received it. Hello, OC Land Care, an estimate has been created, blah, 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 and this message can be customized, obviously. The cool part is, here's the attached PDF, and let me drag it over here. So this is the PDF that they receive of the estimate, and that's how they are. But here's the cool part. the customer receives it, it's coming from us, right? Customer care at email.sapien360.net. But if the customer hits reply, the reply to is actually going to be your email in your settings. So this email right here, when they hit reply, this is the email that it's going to appear to them to send it back, like to reply to, as you can see right here, support@neftis.com. Whatever email you put in here, that's the email that when they hit reply, that it's going to reply to. So make sure you put a correct email in here if you want when your customers reply, if you want them to reply to the correct email. Okay, cool. So let's go back to that estimate. Now, if you go to the customer list and you click on the customer, you'll see that under 1525, there's no transactions. Under A175, there's that transaction, that estimate we just created for $240. If you click on the main customer, Osilanker, it'll show all the transactions that you've ever done for this customer. If you select on the specific job, it'll only display the transactions for that specific job. So let's go back to the estimate. This is the cool part from estimating. You can actually, if the customer says, hey, you know what, Juan, let's do it. Let's go ahead and let's get that started. You can click on Mark as Accepted. Now, there's two things you can do from this point. You could either create a contract or create an invoice. Now, if you're a contractor, and you're a painter, carpenter, whatever it is, and it's a big estimate, right? It's an estimate for, I don't know, $100,000, $120,000. They're not going to make you one check for $120,000. What you can do is you can create a contract, and eventually we're going to even integrate like DocuSign and stuff like that. So it'll create a full-on contract, send it to them through DocuSign, and they can sign it and approve it. But the cool part is when you create the contract, it'll actually create a contract for that project, where then in the future you can create invoices against that contract, and then it'll keep track of the balance due on that contract. So if it's a $120,000 contract and you're creating $5,000 a weekly progress payments, so the idea is that you'll create an invoice every week for $5,000. Once you submit that invoice to that customer, the contract value will go down by $5,000 or whatever the amount is. So if you do a $10,000 deposit, and you create that invoice for $10,000, the contract will now be, if the contract was $120,000, the balance on the contract will now be $110,000. And then every time you create an invoice against that contract, let's say it's a weekly $5,000, every week that contract balance will go down by $5,000. But the cool part is it'll go down by $5,000 once you receive that payment. So if there's an open balance invoice, the contract value will still stay the same. But once you receive the payment, then the contract value will go down by that payment received. In this demo, we're going to create an invoice from this contract from this estimate, because it's only $240. So here are the two options, right? You have to accept the estimate first, that it's been accepted. And then you can either click create contract or create invoice. We're going to create invoice. And essentially what this does, it pulls all the information from that contract. So even if I manually typed in the description and I have 10 rows of different items, it's going to pull all that information into the invoice, so that way you don't have to retype it all up. So that's what's cool about creating an invoice from an estimate. Same thing with the contract. So and let's say the customer has a PO number. So let's do 1334 as the purchase order number. Project name, we'll name it 8175 painting, or whatever it is you want to name the project name. It does have the description already, item and description already, the amounts, all of that. Now invoices will not show you your cost and markup. That's only on estimating. And then right here, you can type in a custom message for your thank you message. But here's the cool part. Let's go ahead and click save so that it can actually save the invoice 1003. You can click on PDF, and this is how the invoice looks as a PDF. It adds the remit payment to address down here, which again is whatever you put in your branding under settings. Same thing as all this information, and then your logo. Obviously, if you did upload it. It has the bill to, ship to, addresses, invoice numbers, and the invoice numbering, again, is also chronological order. So every time you create a new invoice, it's going to be the chronological next number, right? So the next invoice we create will be 1004, shows the terms. So the due date based on the terms, right? July 18th. total amount. So looks good. Let's go ahead, email to customer. Again, we'll just put my email so it doesn't actually send it to customer because this is just a demo. We're going to go ahead and click send. And then I'm going to go ahead and open it up over here on my end. So you guys can see how it's received as an actual invoice, as an email. Same thing. And then so this logo too is the logo that you upload. So it's going to be whatever branding logo you uploaded. It'll show it in the invoice. Again, it's attached. So you'll be able to, the customer will be able to download the attached PDF. And again, if you hit reply, it's going to reply to the email that you put under your branding settings. So that way, if they reply, they're actually replying to you, not to the Sapien system. Cool. So we created an invoice, we saved it. Now let's go ahead and save and close. We're going to go back to the customer list. As you can see, it shows sent. Let's go over here, OC Landcare. So now OC Landcare has an open balance of $240. It has one open balance invoice with 2 jobs. But as you can see now, there's 2 transactions. There's the estimate 1004, invoice 1003. Now the customer owes money, right? If you go to chart of accounts, you'll see that under accounts receivables, now you're owed $240 because of that invoice, right? If you go to the dashboard, the account balances now shows whatever money you have in your bank account plus the accounts receivables. So now your company's net value is $502.50, right? So it makes pretty cool, accounting transactions. It keeps track of invoicing, estimate, all that, but also your bookkeeping, accounting, and then your company's value. So let's go back to customers. We're going to leave that invoice open for now so you can see. So we created right now. It also shows that that customer owes $240. But now let's create an invoice directly from a job without creating an estimate. You just click those 3 dots again. We're going to create an invoice. Essentially the same process, but you're skipping the created estimate right here. Let's do 1335, and then we're going to name this 1525 East Ontario is the job name. We're going to do junior consulting this time. We're going to charge, we're going to do 2.5 hours at $125 an hour, 312, right? So now let's do save and close. Save as active. Cool. So now we have 2 invoices for the same customer, but one is for one job, one is for the other job. As you can see, for OC Landcare, the total balance is $552.50, but they owe $312 for this job and $240 for this job, but the customer owes a total of $552.50, right? So it's pretty cool. It keeps track per job, how much they owe per job, and you can have multiple invoices per job, right? So, for example, let's create another invoice for this job, right? We're going to do PO 1335 and then 8175 East Kaiser for the job name. We'll do project management consulting, and we'll do 2.25 hours, right? Save and close. Save is active. Let's go back to that customer. So now the customer owes $890. But if you click on the main customer, it'll show you all the transactions for that customer, right? Estimate, invoice, 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 right? If you click on this one, then there's only that one transaction because we didn't create the estimate. A175 should have, so it has the estimate and then the invoice that we created without the estimate and then the invoice we created from the estimate. But now the customer owes $890 for a total between both jobs. So that's how you would create the customer, estimating, and then invoicing. Now let me show you, let's say the customer mailed in a check, right? Let's say the customer mailed in a check for the $240, right? So we're gonna click on the customer. We're gonna go to receive payments. And this is pretty cool. So this is just like if the customer mailed you in a check, you opened it up, you go on here, okay, I received the check today for the amount of $240, right? Let's say, and then the type of transactions you can receive is cash, check, credit card, ACH, bank transfer, wire transfer, or Zelle, or even other. but we'll just leave it as check. And let's say the check number is 1012. That's the check number itself. And then here's where it gets pretty cool. Let's say you receive multiple payments from multiple customers and you want to make one deposit. You would just deposit this $240 onto undeposited funds, and it'll tally all that up into one deposit, so you can deposit it only one time into that bank account. Those of you accountants, CPAs, bookkeepers understand this very well, for accounting purposes. Or you can deposit it straight into whatever bank account you have in your chart of accounts. In this case, it's just a single check, so we'll just deposit it directly. We'll select, and usually the check itself will say what invoice number is that check for. So you just kind of search which number or which check it's for, or for which invoice it's for. So you select the check or the invoice. So now it's receiving $240, applying $240, and there's unapplied $0, right? So if this check was for more than $240, the system will recognize, like, wait a minute, you're receiving more than what you're owed for that specific invoice. But accounting departments are pretty good keeping track of that type of stuff. So let's go ahead and receive payment. So now we received the payment. As you can see, you see the transaction right here, a payment for invoice 1003, the check number 1012 for $240, and now the customer's balance dropped by those $240. So now the customer owes $650, and how much they owe for each job, right? But here's the cool part: if you go to that specific invoice, now that invoice will show as paid, so with the zero balance, right? And you could even email this to the customer. It'll show that stamped paid on that invoice. So that way it's paid, the customer knows it's paid, and again, you can send that as an email again. We don't need to send that. I've already showed you guys how that works. But if you go to your chart of accounts, now your bank account shows that deposit, right, of $240. And that's what I mean. When you receive the payments, we selected this bank account to deposit those $240. And you can later on reconcile this with your bank account statement, right? And then, like I said, we're going to be integrating with Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, US Bank. So you can pull those records and just reconcile automatically. And what else? Let's see here. So now that chart of account shows $502 for that bank account. You're still owed a total of $650, right, for that, from those other invoices that are still due. And then if you go down here to your income accounts, right, you've made a total of $1,152 year to date just from consulting fees alone, or whatever. If you're a contractor and you do painting, electrical, plumbing, you can have all those different types of accounts. You'll be able to see how much money you've done for painting, how much money you've made for plumbing, electrical, that type of stuff. If you do sell stuff, you'll be able to have a balance there. But it's all tied in, guys. It does do the whole debits and credits from one chart of account to another. You can even have multiple bank accounts, so you can be transferring from one account to the other, and it keeps track of all those transactions. If you go to your dashboard again now, the dashboard should show under the Chase how much money you have in that bank account, how much you're still owed. So your company's value is this total, right? Because you're owed that money. Even though you haven't deposited in your bank account, you're owed that money. So it is a value, right? Accounts receivable is a value to the company. And that's pretty much it for this video, guys. I wanted to just kind of showcase how to add the customer, create the estimate, convert the estimate to an invoice, and then how to create an invoice directly without having to create the estimate. But the most important thing here is keeping track of those transactions so that you can know if you're looking at your customer list, how much they actually owe you total, if they made payments on certain transactions. And when you receive the payments, you're able to keep track of those payments so that you have live knowledge of how much they actually owe you. But especially if you're sending out 10, 20, 30 invoices per day, a lot of people tend to want to remember it all in their head, or they write it down on a piece of paper and try to keep track of it. And it's cloud hosted, so you can access this system virtually from anywhere in the world. We are working on a mobile app, so you'll be able to do these types of transactions from an iPhone, Android smartphone, from an iPad or Android tablet from the actual app itself. I know it's kind of the fundamentals of how to use the app. There's so much involved, so we'll be doing more videos. This is just the fundamentals on adding a customer, creating estimates and invoices, and receiving payments against those invoices. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Other than that, guys, thank you for watching. Go ahead and go to sapien360.com and get your 30-day trial started. It's very simple. All you need is either a Google email or you set up your password, and you can get started on a 30-day trial. Any feedback would be greatly appreciated. Until the next one.